Hello, everyone. My name is Chad Evans. I'm one of the application engineers here at Ceratec. I've actually have posted my email here on this page. So if you do have any questions related to NX, you can always email me directly. And also in the chat window, you can specify any questions. I'll pass it on to Daniel.
Thanks, Chad and Andrea. So as they said, my name is Daniel Rubio. I've been with Ceratec over 8 years now, supporting Solid Edge, TMAP, and some NX SimCenter as well. And my email is listed there as well if you have any questions. And today I'll be covering the Solid Edge part of the remote licensing for today.
Well, today we've got the agenda here. We're going to break, as Andrea had mentioned, we broke it up into 3 parts, the NX, the Solid Edge, and the FEMAP. So the first section we're going to be talking about is the NX agenda. So what with NX is we're going to be talking about is licensing borrowing for some of the NX floating licenses out there. Andrea did talk a little bit about our YouTube channel. So after this presentation, I'm going to put a nice demo together that will load up on our video link. And you can see here, I'm going to explain the different steps here, 1 through 7, connecting to your office, opening the NX tools, doing the borrowing options. So the first thing I want to mention too is if you're running VPN currently in your office, then the borrowing is really not required. So we currently at Ceratec use an open VPN. So if I need to log into my VPN, I have that option to do that. But today, with some of the limitations, you know, Ceratec has 150 employees. We may only have 100 VPN, licenses for that. So this is where the borrowing option becomes an option. So if I type in my VPN, I connect up to my, borrowing license server, and then I pull that information down. So you can see I've got a little schematic on the right-hand side. All my users are off-site, but looking at the VPN. But most users that are calling into our help desk today are people that are being told to work from home. So I'm explaining to them, hey, well, if you're going to work from home, they're literally taking their desktop, packing it up in their car, and going home. But I'm advising them while you're on the network, you want to be pulling that license down. Okay, so the first thing you want to be doing if you plan to work from home without a VPN, you want to look at the step 1 where you're opening up your start menu, locating your license tool under the Siemens NX, and it could be NX 11, 12, or some of the new 1847, 1899 series. So once you get into the licensing tool, the GUI is going to pop up. So step 2 is under the borrowing settings tab on the left-hand side. You're going to click the borrow button at the very top there that I've actually highlighted in red. And once you pick that, it's going to bring up the next window. So step 3, you're going to see that borrowing license. Which license am I going to borrow? So on my example here, I just check marked the NX Mach 3 production design. I've actually allocated a return date of April 30th, 2020. And then I want to go ahead and say okay. But I've also put a little note there. So borrowing the licenses are limited to a 90-day maximum borrow period. You can reborrow the license for an additional 90 days by reconnecting to the network and doing the repeated items. So step 4, you always want to make sure you hit the apply button. So I actually had a call the other day where he was having an issue. He was having troubles borrowing the license, but he didn't know. I just didn't tell him, or he just didn't know. You have to hit that apply in order to take effect. Okay. So under step 5, once the borrowing tab is, it's already licensed and been borrowed, now you need to make that active. So you got to apply that license. And you see I've highlighted in red the license that you need to move over and make it active to the applied bundles, and then select the apply after that. Now your license has been borrowing, it's complete. And even when you're borrowing that license, it may take a couple minutes. It's something that's not very fast. It's not a very fast process. I mean, with me working from home, I'm using a VPN, clear across the other, West Coast. I live on the East Coast. It could take 5-10 minutes for that license to actually be borrowed from the server to my location, and then I'm applying that bundle and then apply it. Actually selecting the apply button. So next, you always have to remember. So you've borrowed your license from the server. So you've actually taken that license away. And I actually had a call yesterday where, they got 2 users and they only have 1 borrowed license. So they, the 2 users are basically going back and forth between the borrowed license. But you also got to remember, once you borrow that license, you do have to remember to return it. And in order to return it, you have to hit the return button at the top of the page. Make sure your check is on the license is checked, and you have to hit that apply. If you just check it and hit the return button, it will not work properly. You do have to hit that apply button. Okay, and after that, you're good. You're back to work. But also, on a second note, the next page, I want to talk a little bit about the Amazon web server. So we've got more and more customers that are people are working at home, and that is an option where we could be moving your license that is on site at your company to an Amazon web service. This way, you're pulling your license from a web browser. And we've got some fairly big companies that have multiple users that are off site, but they don't always come into the office every day. So this was a perfect example for them to be using an Amazon web service. Okay. And then lastly, what Andrea just noted a second ago, Learning Advantage is currently free by Siemens for 30 days because Siemens recognizes that a lot of states are getting on lockdown. A lot of people are going home. I've been told by many people where I've actually packed up my whole tower computer or desktop, and I'm working from home now. And I'm not too sure exactly what to do because he's used to asking, his design manager or his team leader on questions. So Learning Advantage gives the opportunity for the NX users to continuous exercises, building up his skills while he's an offsite. So that link is available in the chat window. And it's also here if you want to make a screenshot and go into that. And next, I'll turn it over to Dan Rubio, and he'll be talking about Solid Edge.
Thanks, Chad. So let's jump right to it. Now, for Solid Edge, most of you should know you have 2 types of licenses. You have either a floating license or a node lock license, which is locked to that specific machine. So first, let's talk about floating. There's 2 options there. You can either borrow the license, which is actually the exact same as what Chad just showed. So I won't spend too much time on that. I just have a couple of screenshots for that. And then the second option is a travel license. And for that, it's actually the same as a node lock license. So that's where I'll show it. And the second option for node lock licenses is to actually just transfer that permanent license. So if you think it's going to be, not just a few weeks, but maybe a couple months that you'll be using a secondary machine, then it may be easier to just transfer that license once. And then once you're going to be going back to your office, you can transfer it back. So first, the license borrow for floating licenses. Again, this is just like what Chad just showed for NX. So in your Windows Start menu, you're going to open up the Siemens Solid Edge 2020 group, and you'll see the license borrow tool right there, highlighted by number 2. Once you do that, you'll see the same exact window that Chad just showed. So again, you're just going to click that borrowing settings tab, click the borrow button, choose the license, press apply, and you'll be good to go. You can disconnect from the network and start working. Now let's talk about node lock licenses. So what you're going to do is go to the Siemens support site. The shortcut is support.ugs.com as shown there, and that's going to take you to the main page you see here. Now, if you scroll down, you'll see a bunch of links to all of the other pages. So what you're going to do is click the license management button. And if you're not signed in, it's going to prompt you to sign in. So go ahead and do that. And we always recommend to save that username and password in your browser so you don't have to sign in every single time. So once you're in, you're going to see this page here with a few different links. Now at the top right, you're going to click the passwords and license files button. Again, keep in mind, this is for the travel license option. So you're going to see a dropdown that says Solid Edge, which is what we want. And then the version, we're going to open that dropdown and click 2020 travel license. So notice there's a few different ones for 2020. So the first is at home. Now, we won't talk much about home licenses today, but if you have any questions, we can certainly address them. I do just want to remind you all that home licenses are really just meant for self-training, not really for production work. And if you use a home license, it'll actually put a watermark on your drawings. So just keep that in mind. If you are actually working from home, doing production work, you're going to use this travel license option. So you hit continue once you select that. And then you're going to see, you may actually see an intermediary step, which is shown here. Now, you may not see this. If you don't, you can ignore this. But if you do see this page, just click Generate License, and that'll step you through to the next step, which is here. Now, the days available, that's just an overall total, depending on how many licenses you have. So in this case, the maximum days for a travel license is 30. So since that days available says 150, that tells us we have 5 Solid Edge Classic licenses. So you're going to click that. And by the way, if you do have any add-ons, you can select them, of course, as well. And then you'll see this page. All you're going to do is input your email address, your SEC ID. Now, do keep in mind for Solid Edge 2020, the SEC ID is now known as the Composite 2, if you see that referenced somewhere. Now, if you're on the machine that you're going to be using, you can just click that Get ID button you see there. If not, you can just open up the license utility from Windows Start and manually type in the SEC ID. Then you choose the number of days. As you can see there, there's a drop down that says 30 right now, but if you only need it for 10, 20, however many days, you can just specify that. And the last step is to click Generate License at the bottom. Once you do that, you'll get that license file downloaded and also emailed. So once it's on your computer, you'll open up the license utility. You'll choose the first option that says, I have a license file, and then click the Browse button. You'll navigate to that license file that you just downloaded, click OK in here, and that's really it. You can fire up Solid Edge. Now, let's talk about the second option for node-lock licenses. Again, this is if you don't want to worry about the travel license, since it does have a max of 30 days. If you think you might need 2 or 3 of those, then it may, save some steps to just transfer that license completely to the other machine. So back on the main licensing page we saw before, instead of the passwords and license files we clicked before for the travel license, we're going to click Product Activation. Once you do that, we're going to see the same option. So in this case, we're going to stay on the blank 2020. So not the home, not the travel, and click Continue. So again, this is your permanent license. Then you'll see this page. This shows all of your licenses and, of course, any add-ons. So the top section you probably won't see. That's unassigned licenses. The second section is where you will see the machines and all of those licenses that each machine has. So in this case, we need to modify the existing machine. So in this case, here we're showing the machine called DR and the SEC ID highlighted in red. So we're going to click that. And that's going to let us modify that machine. So currently, we have 2 licenses on there. So what you're going to do is click Remove for the license that you need to transfer. And of course, any add-ons, and then click Finish. Once you do that, you're going to go back to this main page, and we're going to need to create a new machine at the top. So once you click that Create New Machine button, you will type in a machine name. Now, that's typically your host name of your machine. It's, of course, easier to keep track of, but it really can be anything you want, actually. And then for the SEC ID, that's the exact same as we saw before. So you can click Get Number to automatically populate it if you're on that machine right now. And if you're not, if you're doing it from another machine, for example, you can just jot down that SEC ID from that machine in the license utility and type it in there. Once you type in that information, you need to make sure to click the Create button. That's actually going to save it into the system. And once you do that, you'll see the boxes disappear. And now it's just showing you the information that you typed in. So Ceratec 11, and of course the SEC ID. Once that's there, you're going to click the Assign Products button. So remember, the first step we did before was we removed the license, and now what we're doing is reassigning that license or those licenses to the new machine that you just created. So we're going to click Assign for the licenses that you want to add, and then click Finish. And the last step is, again, Generate License File. So that's going to submit it. It's going to generate the new license in the system and save it to your machine. Once it's saved to your machine, you're going to follow the same exact steps we saw before. So you're going to open up the license utility, say, I have a license file, click Browse, browse to that license file you just downloaded, click OK, and then you can fire up Solid Edge. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dan Nato.
Thanks, Mr. Rubio. So for licensing inside FEMAP, just like the other ones, there's 2 options. You have a node locked and you have a floating license. If you need to download license files or software, as shown earlier, you can do so with your web key. There is a handout attached to this slide here. So FEMAP 2020 node locked. So if it is a node lock based license, it is locked to the dongle, and the dongle holds that information. So you can physically take your dongle to whichever Windows PC that you were working from home with, plug it in, enter in those access codes. Now, say your dongle is, I don't know, stuck at work, or it's not available to you. For this time being, Siemens is issuing this temporary license file that you can use. And this is an attached document. It's a direct document that came directly from Siemens, and this is also available as a handout. So the node lock is very straightforward, where the floating is a little bit more complex. So you have a couple options. You can either VPN connection to the server, and then you can just directly pull a license file as if you were sitting there. Now, if you don't have VPN connection, or maybe you temporarily can get VPN connection, or maybe your company has a limited amount of licenses for VPN and you can only pull a license for so long, this is where you could go ahead and borrow a license file, just like we showed before. So to borrow a license file, you need to be temporarily connected to the VPN or somehow connected to the server so that you can communicate with the server to borrow it. So the application is borrow.exe, and this is located in the root directory of FEMAP. And in the picture there, I'm using FEMAP version 11.4.2, but the directory should be fairly similar by default. This would be on the client machine, the machine that wants to pull the license. You would launch this borrow.exe executable. The bottom picture is showing you the executable. You need to make sure it's pointing to the license server in the top line, and it'll say borrowing for, and that would be you, the client. Then you can specify the features that you're interested in. In this case, I had FEMAP, a Nastran seat, and a nonlinear Nastran seat. Specify how long you want to borrow it. And after you specify the number of days you want to borrow, you just go ahead and select borrow. So we're selecting borrow. Then it will automatically populate. Well, it's going to communicate with the server. So it takes a little bit like Chad said. It'll come back. It'll tell you what you borrowed, and it will tell you when those things expire. And you'll notice that this shows that I have 0 available. And then if you need to return those licenses after a certain amount of time that you specified, you just go ahead and run that borrow.exe again and click return all. And then you can return those features back to the pool, and you'll no longer see that those have been borrowed. So it's very straightforward. We just launched that borrow.exe executable, specify what we want, how long we want it, and then we can return it the same way. Now, one important thing just in general for licensing borrowing, I don't recommend borrowing it for a very long time. This is for I would say all softwares. Specify the amount of time that you think that you're going to borrow it, because if you say you do 120 days, which is the limit in FEMAP's case, and something happens and somebody, maybe something crashes and the license gets held up, well, that's held up from the server, and you need to reconvene with Siemens to maybe send you a new license file or reset something. So I recommend, doing it in, a period of time that makes sense. That is a reasonable number. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great job, guys. Great job covering everything. I think you kind of covered most of the questions we've been getting on the support line from our customers. Let us know if you have any suggestions for future sessions. We're still planning out the second half of the year, so we do take those seriously. And we appreciate you all joining us today, and we hope that this was helpful. If you need email addresses or any other information, you can email us at marketing@ceratech.com, and we'll be able to get that info to you. Thanks so much, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful day, and stay safe.
Thanks for checking out our channel. If you like what you saw, make sure to like and subscribe down below so you don't miss out on any new videos. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter for the latest engineering news and information. And to see all of our upcoming events, please visit our website at ceratech.com/events.